Okay, the situation has now completely changed. That to me is the hero move of the day. Dear friends and followers, welcome back to my channel. Lovely greetings from my hotel room here in Hong Kong. Today's video is going to be a video that I would like to call a successful emergency. We're going to be looking at a Boeing 757 that rejected its takeoff due to an engine failure or fire and then evacuated the passengers on the runway. We're going to be looking at the takeaways, what we can learn from this, and how pilots, ATC and the rescue teams work closely hand in hand to make this a successful emergency. So what are we waiting for? And let's get started.
1, 2.
Tower Delta 1334.
Go ahead.
How long are we looking at? We're literally within like 200 pounds of our fuel situation.
Okay, so what does that mean in time-wise?
Less than 5 minutes here, Delta 1334.
But you need to be airborne?
Yeah.
Okay. Stand by.
Roger. It's Tower Delta 2668, we're ready to go.
Delta 2668, I'm going to ask you, well, stand by 1. Ops 3, Tower, did you copy that?
Hey Tower, it's Ops 1 now in front of the brooms. Ops 3 might be busy, but I heard that you got another departure you need to get out.
Yeah, I've got the second aircraft needs to be airborne in 5 minutes. I'm not sure if you guys are able to clear or not now.
Okay, stand by. Let me try to clear it for you. Stand by.
Yeah, no, 2668, we don't have long either.
Yeah, I'm trying to get them off the runway.
Sure.
Okay, to set the scene, we are in Atlanta Airport and we have these two Deltas that are bound to line up on the runway. Now, interesting enough, I can kind of already tell what weather is currently persisting because Tower is talking to the ops guy. Picture ops as a car and a guy who is sort of the supervisor or coordinator of the brooms. Now, the brooms is the nickname for the snow removal team at Atlanta. So I'm assuming that there's currently a snow removal in progress for runway 09 left, and both of the airplanes have been waiting on the taxiway quite some time to get their lineup clearance.
Hey, Delta 2668, it looks like they're clearing out. You have line up late, 9 left, Mike 2.
Is that for Delta 2668?
Yes, number 1, 9 left, Mike 2, line up late.
9 left, Mike 2, line up late, Delta 2668.
Okay, so Delta 2668 has received their lineup clearance via Mike 2, which is the intersection here on runway 09 left.
Tower, Ops 3, all equipment's off and on. Nothing, go ahead and show it open.
Ops 3, thank you.
Okay.
Delta 2668, departure frequency is 3347, RNAV to Pickett. Runway 9 or left, clear for takeoff.
RNAV to Pickett, 9 left, Mike 2, clear for takeoff, 3347, Delta 2668.
Thanks. Last runway condition report I had was good.
All right, now there was this brief call of the ops guy who is saying we have removed all the snow removal equipment off the runway and the runway is clear of all the equipment, so it is again an active runway. And right after that, the tower controller gave the takeoff clearance to the Delta 2668. They were going towards an RNAV departure to Pickett, which is actually just the extended center line of runway 09. And she also then informed them that the latest report of the runway, that the conditions are good. And he says thank you and off they go.
Delta 1334, Tower, departure frequency is 3347. You can line up late 9 left, Mike 2 there.
All right, line up 9 left, Mike 2, and 3347, Delta 1334.
She basically gave the lineup clearance for the second Delta to line up on runway 09 left. But here we go on the takeoff. Yep, okay, speed brake up.
Delta 2668, we're aborting.
Slowing
Delta
down.
2668, roger. Do you require any assistance?
Stand by.
Okay, that was a rejected takeoff of the Delta 757 on runway 09 left. Now let's look into the rejected takeoff maneuver of a 757. So here are potential reasons why you should reject a takeoff. I've listed them all here. If one of these reasons pops up, you then go into the rejected takeoff maneuver, which goes like this. So either one of the pilots calls out reject or stop, and then the captain is responsible for the action of the controls. So here we go. So without delay, simultaneously close the thrust levers, disengage the auto throttle and apply maximum manual wheel brakes or verify operation of RTO auto brake. If RTO auto brake is selected, monitor system performance and apply manual wheel brakes if the auto brake disarm or deceleration is not adequate. All right, what does that mean? We close the thrust lever, obviously. We disconnect the auto throttle. To monitor the system performance, you are checking for the speed trend vector on the PFD that is having a clear indication going downwards, meaning that you're slowing down. So that ensures that the auto brake is actually clamping up the brakes and you are slowing down. For the first officer, for the pilot monitoring at the same time, they are verifying the action. So they will check that the thrust levers are closed, the auto throttle is disengaged. You would check on the FMA that the speed mode has gone blank, that there's no indication for the auto throttle. Then the maximum brakes apply. You check that the speed trend vector is going down, as mentioned. For the captain again, raise the speed brake lever, apply maximum amount of reverse thrust consistent with the conditions, and continue maximum braking until certain the airplane will stop on the runway. So what does it mean by applying the maximum amount of reverse thrust? Now, in case of an engine failure, you do not want to apply maximum reverse thrust because you would counterintuitively create a massive yaw moment towards the engine that is still running and applying full reverse thrust. So therefore, you only want to apply idle reverse. And this is where the pilot monitoring comes into action. He should check if the engine has failed or whatever is the reason, and then announce it to the captain to only apply idle reverse thrust. And then continue maximum braking until certain that the airplane will come to a complete stop on the runway. Okay, in those icy sort of snowy conditions, you do not want that adverse yaw condition with the reverse thrust because that could really cause the aircraft to sort of wear off the runway. So yeah. As you are slowing down, the pilot monitoring will call out 60 and the captain will then initiate the movement of the reverse thrust levers to reach the reverse idle detent by taxi speed. Okay, in our case that doesn't apply because we are already at only idle reverse. And then communicate the rejected decision to the cabin crew as soon as practical. This is where you push the PA button and say rejected takeoff, or whatever their call out is at Delta. The pilot monitoring communicate the rejected decision to the control tower as soon as practical. You could hear him say Delta 2668 aborting the takeoff on the runway. Now, let's say we have come to a complete stop. Then we get into the third part. When the airplane is stopped, perform as required. Now, review brake cooling schedule for brake cooling time and precautions. Refer to the performance in-flight chapter. That doesn't really apply at the moment here. Consider the following: the possibility of wheel fuse plugs melting. So I don't know the weight of the aircraft, nor do I know the speed at which they rejected the takeoff, but I would assume that a melting fuse plug wouldn't become an issue because of the cold temperatures. Now, that's just sort of speculation for now. The need to clear the runway, not necessarily. We are somewhat of an emergency situation right now. We still own this runway, so we can come to a complete stop. The requirement for remote parking, no, that doesn't apply here. Wind direction in case of fire. Aircraft should be stopped as close as possible to the runway centerline. In case there's a fire, you want the passengers to be running into the wind, not downwind with the fire, so to say, okay? Alerting the fire equipment, yes. If there is a fire indication within the cockpit, a fire warning bell going off, etc., yes, you should consider that. Not setting the parking brake unless passenger evacuation is necessary. I don't know yet. I'm assuming that they have set the parking brake and a evacuation is now on the sort of the horizon. Advising the ground crew of the hot brake hazard. Yes, you can do that. Advising passengers of the need to remain seated or evacuate. This is something still to be discussed among the flight deck crew. And then completion of non-normal checklists if appropriate for conditions which cause the RTO. So if you, for example, had an engine failure, whatever, there is a non-normal checklist that you have to complete. And that then comes to the end of the rejected takeoff maneuver once that is all completed. Now let's continue with the video.
The 2668, depending on what it is, it's probably going to be a right turn off if you're planning.
Wow.
2668, roll trucks, please.
Okay, can I get the nature of the emergency?
I think we done engine failure.
Okay.
Everything has changed now. The air traffic controller, she was really eager to get them off the runway because, yes, Atlanta is a super busy airport. But right after she was kind of sort of announcing, please take the next ride to get off the runway, the pilot said, please roll in the trucks, meaning get fire brigade and ambulances to my aircraft. She then asks if the pilot can sort of state the nature of the emergency. He then says, I believe we have an engine failure. Now, you might question, why didn't the pilot immediately declare a mayday? You don't necessarily have to declare a mayday for an engine failure. If there isn't any indication of a fire warning bell going off in the cockpit, there's no real need yet to declare a mayday. The pilot nevertheless requests the trucks to come to the aircraft because it's a bit of an uncertainty and it's always better to have the trucks there in case, a fire breaks out. Just hold that thought. Okay, here we see the fire trucks now coming.
Delta 1334, go ahead and make that next left turn at Tango and then left on Mike.
Tango and then Mike, roger that, Delta 1334, no problem.
Okay, Delta 1334 now has understood, okay, my colleague has come to a full stop, he has blocked this runway, we're not going to go anywhere. So the tower controller advised them to take the next left on Tango. They're probably going to go right to the gate and refuel. Yes, very inconvenient for the pilots and the passengers, but I mean, the situation is an emergency, so I hope everybody understands.
Delta 2660, it doesn't appear there's any fire or smoke. We've got the trucks coming.
Thank you.
Do you know which engine it is?
The right.
Yeah, we don't have a clear view from here.
Now, the tower controller kind of wants to paint a picture of this scenario, right? She's asking if they can confirm which engine it is. She says she doesn't see any smoke and visible fire at the aircraft. The reason is actually she can't really see engine number 2 because the tower is on the north of the aircraft and basically the fuselage is blocking the view of engine number 2. But watch what she does now.
Op 3 headed that way? Op 3 tower?
Yeah, it's Op 3.
Did you copy that?
Yes, ma'am, copy.
Okay, you have permission to access 9 or left there. Get on 9 or left if you need to, Op 3.
I'll see you on 9 left, Op 3, thank you.
And you said it was the right engine.
Right engine number 2.
Okay, that to me is the hero move of the day. What she does is she actually brings back Ops 3 into this whole scene. They were there just a couple of seconds ago, sort of still clearing the runway of snow. So imagine this little car, truck or whatever it is. He's much more nimble and can get to the aircraft much easier than these fire trucks, which are basically battling the snow. I mean, these heavy, big-sized trucks that are sort of, driving over the snow-covered taxiways and runway, they're going to take some time to get there. So she's using all the resource that she has and is requesting the ops guy to drive there with his little car to the back of the 757 to check if there's any visible smoke or fire coming from engine number 2. Fantastic. This is a really, really good move of her.
Delta 2668, we got a report from somebody at the south cargo that's de-icing and they don't see it. There appears to be any smoke or fire.
Roger.
Fantastic. South of the aircraft on the runway is the de-icing ramp, and she again is taking all the resources that she has, and there's presumably a pilot or a de-icing truck that has a clear view to the aircraft and says, I don't see any visible smoke or fire coming from engine 2. Fantastic. It's really coming along here.
Fire chief, are you up?
Yeah, tower's Op 3.
Op 3, go ahead.
There's no visible smoke from my point.
Copy.
Okay, Ops 3 is now the first guy at the scene. He's on the right-hand wing. He's looking at the backside of the wing and into the engine number 2, and he clearly states, I do not see any visible smoke and fire coming from that engine. Fantastic. But wait.
Up tower, negative. There is flames coming out the back of engine number 2.
Copy. Okay, we've got the RFs off your right and they're entering the runway now.
And tower, there is smoke coming from engine number 2 now.
Delta 2668, there's an RF vehicle. He's entering the runway right behind you now.
You said there's fire coming out of the right engine?
Yes, that's what they're showing.
Alright, we're going to evacuate on the runway.
Op 3, just confirm there is fire coming out of the right engine.
Flames coming out the back of the rear engine now. It's smoking. Number 2 engine.
Delta 2668, copy.
Okay, the situation has now completely changed. The ops guy is seeing visible flames and smoke coming out of the number 2 engine. This has now turned into a better safe than sorry situation, in my opinion. The pilot or the flight deck crew has decided, I've heard enough. They haven't seen the fire yet, but I've heard enough. we are going to evacuate on the runway. And the tower controller also mentions twice to the pilots that the aviation rescue firefighting services are on their way. This is super reassuring for the pilots. It's not just this ops guy in his car. There's actually fire brigade coming towards my aircraft and they're going to be starting to extinguishing that fire. Really, really good. Let's continue.
Atlanta Fire Chief.
Fire Chief.
Ready to conflict the inspection for the emergency aircraft.
Okay, Fire Chief, it's Delta 26. They said who's the aircraft that stopped on 9 or left? Boeing 757 with engine failure, number 2 engine on the right side.
Copy, Bull. Do we still have flames? Failure on 9 left, Delta 2668. Fire Chief.
ARF vehicles, can we get a confirmation? Is the fire put out on the right side?
We are evacuating on the runway.
Okay. Any ARF vehicles, can I get a confirmation? Is there a fire detected from the engine?
Atlanta Tower, R4 is just getting to the scene. It looks like the fire is extinguished. We do have passengers evacuating onto the runway.
Now there's a lot going on at this moment. Now the pilots are notifying the tower one more time that they are going to be evacuating or that the evacuation is already in progress. The fire chief has made it to the scene. Please understand that it's really difficult to drive these massive trucks in weight and size on these snow-covered taxiways and runway to this aircraft. But if you consider if this is real time, from the moment where the pilot said send the trucks, it's only been 2.5 minutes that have gone by. So that is a really, really good response time. Now they are at the scene as well. They can't see any visible fire, but they're notifying tower that there are passengers evacuating to either side of the aircraft. It is a scene now.
Toward November, we're going to get some other vehicles out here to assist with evacuation.
Thank you.
That's affirmative. They're coming right in front of the ARF truck.
These passengers are evacuating on both sides of the aircraft. Ones are running up to taxiway Mike, the other ones are running down to taxiway November. I'm not going to call it uncontrolled, but you know, get these passengers away from a potentially burning aircraft as quickly as possible.
Tower up here.
Op 0 ahead.
Yeah, we're going to show runway 9 right closed at this time. 9 right is closed.
Op 0, roger. We're showing 9 or left and 9 right close.
Ops 0 is now another, let's say, the eyes on the ground for the tower controller, and he is now deciding, okay, we're going to be fully closing runway 09 left, obviously because of the evacuation, and also 09 right. Why is that the case? Because you have all these passengers running around aimlessly, they don't know where to go. So runway 09 right is an active runway, and you don't want any airplanes departing or landing on that runway if there are passengers present. So that's why they decided, okay, we're going to close both of these runways. Safest course of action, for sure.
Ops 1, Tower, you up?
Ops 1's up.
Are you the one there with the brooms at 9 left and looks like Mike 18?
Yeah, I was with them. I kind of left them for a little while to come to the aircraft, but do you need us to go anywhere?
I'll tell you what, whatever ops vehicle or ops personnel is able, I know y'all got y'all's hands full with emergency down there, but if somebody's able to call the tower and on the landline and discuss with the supervisor about possibilities of focusing on 8 left, 8 right, they're looking to do that.
Okay, understand you want to try to get 8 left and 8 right back. We'll try to coordinate that, and I'll meet with the brooms.
Thank you.
Amazing. I mean, that just goes to show that's Atlanta, the busiest airport in the world. You have a tower controller notifying ops, again, this coordinator or supervisor of the brooms. He is telling them, please call them on the landline. We need to coordinate that you send all these snow removal teams to runway 08 left and right to get that runway cleared to keep the operation basically going again. Because now, yes, runway 09 left and right are fully closed and probably will be for at least a couple of hours. So they are sending all the brooms and the snow removal teams to the other runway to get that removed of snow, that the operation can continue. This is amazing. This just goes to show how busy that airport is. Okay, that was it. I think this is a really, really nice and successful emergency. It's great to see that Tower is, yes, the highest building at the airport, but they don't have all their eyes everywhere. Yes, they have a lot of cameras and etc., but they rely very much so on ground crew in cars that are sort of whizzing around or coordinating the snow removal teams to have their eyes and ears onto an emergency aircraft like this one is right here, especially from a pilot's perspective. If you as a pilot cannot see the engine from the cockpit window or the wing or whatever, and you need this person on ground who is right behind the engine or near the engine that gives you an indication of what is going on. This is basically your rear view mirror, if you wanted to say. And this is nice to see how all this sort of came together. They were all on the same frequency and helping each other out. So to come back, first of all, to the rejected takeoff. Was that necessary? Absolutely. If it is before V1, yes, they've done all their calculations, you have to reject that takeoff. They probably had an engine indication that was like fluctuating or something that indicated to them, okay, this is unsafe to continue, we're rejecting the takeoff. All is good. They notified ATC as early as possible that they are aborting the takeoff, rejecting the takeoff and coming to a stop on the runway. And then to me, I believe that the pilots handled this incredibly calm. There was no elevated pitch in their voice or whatever. They stopped on the runway. Then they needed this confirmation from the ground personnel if there was really flames coming out of the engine. The ops guy told them that there are flames. Then you might question, was the evacuation the right thing to do? In my opinion, yes. If you see visible flames, how do you know that there isn't more damage to that engine? You know, maybe let's say there's a fan blade that's sort of ripped off. Maybe that punctured a fuel tank. How do you not know that there's fuel dripping all around the aircraft and you've got visible flames that then ignites that fuel and sets the whole plane on fire? You want to make sure that these passengers are safe. So in my opinion, the decision by the flight deck crew was the right thing to do. So let's briefly look into the evacuation checklist of the 757. The first says condition evacuation needed. This is actually the moment where you briefly sort of sit down, okay, on your hands and say, all right, do we really need to evacuate this aircraft? Yes or no? Let's say yes. In this case, it was. So first of all, you set the parking brake just to make sure that the aircraft isn't moving any much further. Okay, step number 2, cabin altitude mode select to manual. Going into step 3, cabin altitude manual control, hold in climb until the outflow valve is fully open. What you are doing here is you are just opening the outflow valve to depressurize the aircraft. That's basically what it is. Then step number 4, fuel control switches, both cut off. Yes, you want to make sure that the engines are off. You are evacuating passengers outside of the aircraft into a running engine. That's what you don't want to do. Step number 5, advise the cabin to evacuate. PA, evacuate, evacuate, evacuate. Number 6, advise the tower. They did that. We're evacuating the passengers onto the runway. They said that. Number 7, engine and APU fire switches all override and pull. What you're doing by that is when you're pulling all these fire handles is that you are cutting off the hydraulics and the fuel of the engines just to make sure that, you know, if the fuel control switch is off, it doesn't necessarily mean that the engine is really, really off, whatever malfunction there might have been. So by that, you are cutting all the fuel lines to the engine. Step number 8, if an engine or APU fire warning occurs. We don't know that. This is something for the NTSB report when it comes out. Rotate to the stop and hold for 1 second. What that does is that you're rotating the switch and then you're basically discharging the fire extinguisher into the engine to extinguish the fire within the engine. And that is the evacuation checklist complete. And then the pilots would get out of their seats, would check in the cabin if there's any passengers left, maybe walk it up and down, make also sure that there's no flight crew, so cabin crew left, and then vacate via the slides out of the aircraft. That's that. I hope you enjoyed this successful emergency by Delta 2668, the Boeing 757 that rejected its takeoff, had an engine failure, a potential fire, and then safely evacuated the passengers on the runway. I'm happy to hear that there was no serious injuries after this evacuation, and hats off to the pilot to make this executive decision to evacuate the passengers on the runway. Hats off to the cabin crew. An evacuation is not an easy undertaking, and also great teamwork by the air traffic controller and the ops guys on ground and the fire rescue services for holding it all together and making this a successful outcome. I enjoy doing these videos because this leaves a positive note on the flight crew that have gone through this emergency, and also for future pilots that teamwork is everything when becoming a pilot or when you are in the aviation industry. And on that bombshell, here's your checklist for today. Subscribe to my channel, check. Activate the notification bell, check. Follow my Instagram account, check. Perform a touch and go at my website, check. And don't forget, a good pilot is always learning, especially from these successful emergencies. Wishing you all the best. Your Captain Joe.